I'm not going to tell you too much more about this next session. Is Ann Winblad. She's, I mean, nobody who comes here very much. Well, I don't know some of the nerds that are coming on Saturday morning doing the search engine thing. Those are some of those people I don't know so well. I know their search engines, but I don't know them so well. But most of these other speakers I know pretty well. They're name brands, and certainly Ann Winblad is one of those. And I do have you right, don't I? Yes. Yeah. So Ann, where are you? There you are. Well, come on up. Ann Winblad. No, sit down first.
Reminds me of Captain Kangaroo.
Captain Kangaroo. If she's going to say things like that, keep her mic off.
About 2 weeks ago, I sort of had a panic attack about coming to TED because I remembered how the quality of speakers had gotten quite high. And in the software industry, whenever you have a panic attack, you just send email. So what I decided to do was to send out an SOS message to my dear friends in the industry who actually knew me and suggest that they help me out with what I should talk about. Because when I called Richard, he said, there are no topics, just be you. And so I got some interesting responses. Some I'll share with you. One said, you're dealing with an eclectic crowd. It's hard to find specific stuff that will resonate with all of them. And remember, there's lots of intellectuals there too. I guess that means I'm not one of them. One of my friends suggested I talk about how having 4 sisters prepared me for my career, but I decided a 60s version of Little Women would be too lengthy for 15 minutes. So I thought the best suggestion was from one of my very close friends, Heidi Roizen, who suggested I talk about how waitressing and cheerleading had really prepared me to be a pixie titan. So that is what I'm going to talk about today. So you can send email to HeidiR@AOL.com and thank her if this works out. If not, send her email and tell her it was a disaster. Anyway, I've been in the software industry for a long time, actually for 24 years. So I'm about as close to a product of the software industry as anyone can find. And when I thought about Heidi's funny topic idea, I really realized that there have been 2 eras of software. One which lasted for a long time, which I'll call the waitressing era, and one that started in the summer of '95 called the cheerleading era. Let me explain these eras to you. I grew up in community. Whenever anyone talks about community, I know what they really mean. Community means that there are people like farmers, teachers, and nobody really has any money, and you've never seen a customer before. So I know what people say when they come to me with a business plan and say, I'm going to create a community. But I lived in one of those communities. So I never really saw anybody that looked like a customer, even at the local hardware store. I remember if I had to go there and buy something for my dad, you never had to pay anyone money. You just paid them when you could. So when I got to college, I was a math major, but I had a nice scholarship, but it didn't pay for everything, so I had to get a job. And I realized I had to earn quite a bit of money in a very small amount of time, so I applied for a job as a waitress at a bar called Pudge's. So I became a cocktail waitress. This was an amazing experience for me. How many people here have ever had a waitressing job? Okay, so you'll resonate with this. Well, first of all, selling drinks is quite an interesting experience because for the most part, your customers fall into one of 2 camps, happy or sick. So you want to avoid the sick guys and go towards the happy guys. Now, when you go into the bar, you have to memorize quite a large set of products, and you go right in front of every customer and recite your whole product list if need be, and ask for the order immediately. Now, how it worked at Pudge's is that I got paid a minimum wage, but my real money was from tips. I also early on figured out that the bar made money by selling more drinks, so I suggested to Pudge, the owner of the bar, that we put in a sales incentive system for the cocktail waitresses, where the person who sold the most drinks got an extra $100 each night. That was $25 an hour because we only worked 4 hours. Since most of the other cocktail waitresses had a hard time making change and didn't turn in their tab at the end of the night, I won the $100 every single night, which they didn't seem to notice. But the real interesting part for me was that here I was, had this math major, and I was learning how to program, and that was very cool, and it was sort of heads down. And everybody talked about everything theoretically. I learned rather late in the game that I probably should have gone to applied math versus theoretical math. But at the waitressing thing, you're in front of the customer, you take the order, you actually collect the money, and in this case, if you perform a great service, smile a lot, wear skimpy outfits, do whatever you have to do, you get extra money for the services. And it was really interesting. The idea that you could actually walk up to customers and tell them what products you had, collect the money, and go home and make money was amazing to me. Now, I think that's why I was successful in my first round of the software industry, is that I was one of the few entrepreneurs that ever had seen a customer, let alone taken an order or collected the money. Now, this is really important to the history of the software industry, because how software worked then, I started a software company the same year as Microsoft, 75, 76. I've noticed people that are a little bit older can't remember if they were 21 or 22. I have the same problem. It was a long time ago. And basically how it worked is that we were an underappreciated segment. Money dribbled into our segment from venture capitalists in small amounts. In fact, up till 1995, the most amount of money that had ever been given out in 1 year by venture capitalists into the software segment was about $350 million. Small amount. Mostly it was $100 million this year, $200 million the next year. So we were forced to do things pretty linearly. We got a bunch of programmers, we hunkered down, we built a product, we pretty much built what we wanted to, but we went to the bleeding edge of technology and knew it would be useful to someone. Then we went out and found a couple customers to take a risk with us, and those customers served as our reference accounts. I mean, we really overused those customers. Then we got a small infantry of cocktail waitresses, and we basically said, okay, here is the product. Go out and sell it, and also you're not going to get your commission until you collect the money. This was all done. Usually that cycle took about 2 years. A year to build the product, a year to prove that actually somebody wanted to buy the product that you had built. Another important thing I learned as a cocktail waitress, which helped me in management of my sales force, was that frequently I would go up to the table and the guy would always say, yeah, give me a beer, give me a scotch, and sometimes the guy's date would say, do you have anything interesting? And I would recite drink after drink after drink, and nothing would seem to appease this person who wanted something that was unusual. So I started making drinks up. And I would just go up to the bar, order a normal drink, reach behind the bar and pour a grenadine in it, and then it would be something unusual. Now, I realized that really good salespeople also have this proclivity, that if the customer doesn't want what they're selling, or if the customer starts asking for something else, they will just tell them that that thing will be served up to them and they can have it sooner or later. Now, for years and years and years, basically for over a decade, the software industry clicked along in this linear progression. Programmers herded up together in small batches, built something, you added the cocktail waitresses, and you knew if you really had a company. In fact, when we started our venture capital firm, it was amazing to me. Most of the companies, even as late as 1990, came to us not just with demos or whatever, but actually with some customer who had committed to buy the product. And they had really gone part of the journey using sweat equity. In my case, I learned that my colleagues at that time got very clever. They performed all sorts of unnatural acts to keep their companies funded. There were many of my colleagues who learned how to apply for food stamps, who did consulting agreements. I taught typing at a local vocational college, and I don't know how to type. So I did whatever I could do. I sort of type that nerd way where you do the crossover thing every once in a while. But all of a sudden, everything changed in the software industry. In fact, probably the launch of Windows 95 in the summer of 95 was the last great event of the waitressing era. It represented a product that had been crafted together by programmers, had taken a long time to build. There was a launch event, the one seminal event saying we're ready to hand it over to the cocktail waitresses. And in this case, the product in real time was in the hands of stores and people could actually buy it. In 1995, the end of the waitressing era was there. What happened is a lot of important technical things, which I won't go into in my 15 minutes, but basically the thing went on steroids. In 1996, $1 billion was given to software companies to start up with. In 1997, $3 billion was available for funding for new startup companies. In fact, starting in 1996, new software companies were being funded at the clip of 40 to 50 new companies a month. No longer can a startup go through this, let's build something, let's find a couple reference accounts, let's have the big launch event, and let's get the cocktail waitresses humming away and selling this stuff. Instead, today, we're in the cheerleading round. Now, I was a high school cheerleader. It's much more fun than cocktail waitressing. You get to go on the players' bus. The only bad memory I have of cheerleading was when my date, the captain of the high school football team, was knocked unconscious on the field on homecoming night, but that's the only bad memory I have. The dance was awful. I had to haul him around, and he was much bigger than me. But basically, now companies are forced into this very shortened cycle where their strategy is one and only one strategy: declare victory on day one. So I now have lost all my waitressing skills. They come so much later. In fact, last year, 70 software companies went public. 2/3 of those companies had no profit, meaning they hadn't even hired most of the cocktail waitresses. They hadn't even gotten to that point, but they were already public. This declare victory strategy is very, very challenging. It's a slippery slope. It's a lot of fun. It means that you stand up on day one before you have customers, before you have very many employees, and you say, hey, we won. No one else enter. No one else listen to us from the press. Good employees should only come here. Customers should come here. In fact, you're required to get all the risk elements attached to you immediately. The press pays attention to you. The employees come and work for you. The customers are your customers. You do that on the day you get funded. You get out the cheerleaders and you declare victory. And it's like pep rallies. We used to have these every Friday at our school where we get out there, and my senior year was a tough year for cheerleading because the football team didn't win any games. But the fans didn't seem to notice. So when our companies say, it's not going so well, I bring it back to the fall of 1969 and say, look, we'll just have another pep rally and remind people that we won. We don't have to play the game yet. That comes later. Now, the slippery slope here is that there have been a number of companies who've forgotten to play the game and just think that this is a series of pep rallies. The other slippery slope is it is harder to go public under this model. And it is enormously competitive if everybody catches on to this. So there's two things I'd like to say to end this. One is, you're not supposed to tell anybody about this declare victory strategy, because if everybody catches on to it, it's an even playing field. And second, the waitressing era is going to come back, but not soon. Because last year alone, $10 billion was given to venture capital firms from universities' endowments. So there will continue to be an overabundance of software companies, a requirement to declare victory, a very compressed cycle. So it'll be 3 or 4 years before we see the waitresses again. Thanks.